Hey everybody, this is my 10-gallon office tank, and I recently added 4 checkerboard barbs, and as far as I can tell, they're all gone. I'm not sure why, so we're going to talk about what I've looked into so far to sort of figure this out, and I'm not coming up with any real conclusive evidence as to what would have been the cause of them not making it. I had them a week and a day today if they had made it. So they basically made it 1 week before they all died. Yesterday I shot a video and I found 2 of them. One looked fine. One was kind of laying low in the bushes and didn't look really good but was still alive. And then I could not find the other 2. So when the video was done, I started looking around and I was able to find the body of one of them behind the little cave over there on the right. But I was never able to find the body of the 4th one. So I removed the one, and we still had the mystery of where did the other one go. I do have a little rubber lip pleco in this tank, so it's entirely possible that it was eaten. It could be inside that little cave over there. And then, if a fish is dead long enough, a little small fish, it doesn't take long for it to just kind of rot away altogether. So no big mystery that one of them was unaccounted for. When I came in today, I found another one dead, and it was the one that we saw yesterday that still looked healthy and vibrant, and it was dead and floating at the top, and so I never found the other one. So we're still missing 2 bodies, but I have looked and looked and looked all day today. Now, I haven't put my hands in there and rooted through the bushes or anything, but I've looked in there, and I've not seen anybody swimming around. Nobody came out during feeding. So I have to assume all 4 of them are gone. Now, when I bought them, it was, I'll call it a spontaneous purchase. I went in there looking for something different. Looking for something that would fit that bill. And I didn't have any experience with that fish per se, but they were little barbs, and a barb's a barb. I know barbs can do just fine in my water. Most barbs are tough as nails anyway, so no biggie. I brought them home. I am aware that my tanks are usually nutrient rich, I'll say. High nitrates in most of my tanks. So before I put fish in my quarantine tanks, I always make sure I get in there and do a really big water change and get my nitrates down as low as possible before I add new fish, just to avoid any potential nitrate shock from, going in maybe a low nitrate situation from the fish store, coming home to my tanks that have, 60 parts per million or more sometimes. Can be quite a shock on the fish, and that can kill them. So I am aware of that, and I did do a big water change, about 60% water change before I put them in. But I never tested the nitrates, and I never actually looked into the fish to see what their needs were. So I started doing all that today, and I found out that their needs are about what I expected them to be. The pH should be between 5.5 and 7.5. They are a little bit softer water than I was expecting for a barb, so that got me, a little curious, because I've got that funny water. I do have sodium ions in my water, even though it's soft. So they could take up to 235 parts per million on the hardness scale, even though that's a little misleading. I'm not going to get into a big discussion about total dissolved solids and hardness and how you measure it and all that kind of stuff. But I know what I'm looking at when I see numbers like that, and it was easy enough for me to get an idea of what I should have been looking for. So I tested the nitrates in the tank, and they came out, they're getting around 40 parts per million, but it's been a week. It's been more than a week since I did that water change. So a week ago, I'm sure they were much lower than that. Even if you don't want to say they're much lower than that, you could call them 30 parts per million. That's not going to give any fish nitrate shock and kill it, over a period of a week. If it's coming even from 0 nitrates, that's just not going to have that big of an impact. And I doubt they were coming from a 0 nitrate situation. So that's got kind of ruled out. I did do total dissolved solids test, and the TDS came out at 469 parts per million. So that's actually not that unusual for my tanks. Now, when it comes to total dissolved solids, this is another one that I just don't really get all the confusion about it. It's simply the total dissolved solids that are in the tank. That can be dissolved CO2. Well, I guess that's a dissolved gas, so never mind. Phosphates, nitrates, any of that kind of stuff counts towards total dissolved solids. So if my nitrates in there are at, say, 40 parts per million, but there's 469 parts per million TDS. That means I got a lot of other stuff in my water. I know anywhere from 2 to 300 of those parts per million is sodium ions. I put them in there myself through my water system. That's why I've got this odd water. It's got zero hardness, but I've got hundreds of parts per million sodium ions in the water, and not all fish can take that. So that could be a possibility, that I've just got too much sodium and that the total dissolved solids are simply too high for them, even though the water hardness itself is not. And then I got in and I checked the pH, and that's where it got even more confusing for me. The first thing I checked was with my pH meter, and I've never trusted the thing. It always shows weird numbers that just don't seem right and never match up with my little test vials. And then I'll do a control test, and it comes out working perfectly exactly to the control. So I never really know what to believe, what's more accurate. I stuck the meter in there, and the meter's telling me I've got between 8.2 and 8.4 pH in this tank, which is just nonsense. That's impossible for me to have pH that high with my water. If anything, as these tanks sit longer, I scratch my head as to how the pH gets so low, not how it gets so high. So I went and I got my test vials, and I tested, and I got what is high pH for me, but it falls right in that kind of middle of the road between the low range and the high range. I've been told to call that 7.3, but I usually call that 7.6, because the vial on the low range pH, if you start getting up above, I think it goes like from 7.2, it jumps all the way to 7.6 is the next reading, and it's like a bright blue. So I've got that bright blue reading that looks like 7.6, but it even looks worse than that. But then when I test on the high range doesn't come out dark enough to even get onto the high range. So I'm clearly not up into the 7.4, which is where the high range starts. And that's where it gets weird. You know, in the low range, it looks like... Actually, you know what? I'm going to put you on pause for half a second, and we'll go look at the vials and the color chart, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So the blue vial on the left here is my low range, and if you look at the pH chart, when you get all the way down to the bottom, you're at 7.6, which is about where this looks. But then when you get over into the high range, that starts at 7.4, which is already lower than this number, and this is not really dark enough to even make it here to 7.4. And from the couple of professionals I know that I've spoken to about this, and this has been a while, you know, my earlier days of fish keeping when I was curious about everything, I basically was told to go with it being at 7.4 or 7.5, because it's not 7.4 on this, but it's at 7.6 on this, so it's actually somewhere below 7.4 according to this one. So that's why I've always been told to call that 7.3. And, you know, it's kind of right on that fence. It's 7.3, 7.4, somewhere around in there. And my water softening guy, the guy that does all my water-related issues, he said that the new industry standard for neutral pH is actually going to be 7.3 rather than what we now think of as 7. He never elaborated on that. And that was a year or two ago, but he said that 7.3 is about what we should actually really honestly be thinking about as neutral as opposed to 7. So I still don't know what he made of that. I still get a little annoyed when I fall kind of right between these pHs, but ultimately we're not talking about super accurate precision here. I've got a good enough idea that we're, call it 7.5. You know, so even for the pH, I'd be at the upper end of the pH range for those barbs, but still within their tolerances. The only thing that's pretty outrageous was my total dissolved solids, and that is probably more of a result of all of this equipment over here, which puts sodium ions in my water. So I'll do some more video about all this water system one of these days. I got a lot of new viewers that probably don't know anything about this yet. Everybody else has seen me do videos about this plenty of times over the years. So I'm going to call it good right here and say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I am determined to get some more of those fish. I really liked them. We will get this pH sorted out. I'll maybe do some more water changes on that tank and bring the nitrates and the pH back down to more acceptable levels, and then maybe we can get back in there and try another batch of those little checkerboard barbs, because I really liked them. They were really cool fish. So again, thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. See you real soon in the next one.